All right, here we go. Welcome, everybody, tuning in. We've got a very special guest. I'm excited to have Henry Chervenka with us. Henry, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, the special stream. I'm really excited to have you here and be able to let you show off your techniques and how you do hard surface. Specifically, for those that don't know, that car that was in the beginning, Henry has made that actually gets shipped with ZBrush. So it's part of our pro projects that we are starting and rolling out this year that we just started doing. So Henry was kind enough to make that car completely 100% in ZBrush. So in this stream, he's going to break down a little bit of how he makes that car, with his processes, and sharing a lot of other really great tips and tricks with you all. So I want to do a quick audio check, make sure everyone can hear us okay. If anybody in the chat can make sure we hear me okay. And then Henry, you want to go ahead and we'll double check that.
Yeah. How's my volume doing?
You sound good to me.
All right.
We're good. Okay, we got a yes for both of you. Okay, audio is great. We're winning. We're winning already. Chalk it up as a success. Okay. So I'm excited. I am going to, so you guys are aware, I'm going to mute myself most of the time for audio. If you do have questions that are coming through, please go ahead and put them in chat. I will do my best to filter questions to Henry as he's going, but he's got a lot of things he wants to cover, so I don't want to interrupt him a ton, but we definitely want to give you guys opportunities to ask questions that I can filter to Henry. So, and then I will be living in the chat with you guys. So by all means, feel free to chat in there and I will answer what I can. And then from time to time, I'll throw questions at Henry. So for the most part, this is going to be Henry talking and showing his techniques. So we're going to show the screen, his ZBrush, and then us, and make sure you guys can see that as well. For me, it looks good. Henry, it's good for you. I would assume on your side as well. Right?
That's good for me.
Okay. And then everybody else, if someone can give me a little thumbs up in the chat, that'd be a great help. Just making sure we're good to go before I hand it over to Henry and he starts going. Again, I will be in the chat for you guys. So Henry, I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to let you take it from here, and I'm just here to help and support in any way I can.
All right, cool. All right, so a little bit of maybe a rundown of what I'm going to be covering today. I'm going to start out probably with some design features that are more subtle than your obvious on-the-nose ones that you see. Then I'm going to switch over to probably what a lot of you guys are probably interested in is the breakdown of the car. Then I'll shoot over to some quick tips, and then we'll finish off on some topology. And if we have some time, I'll show you how to do the tire and the rim. So for the design features, one of the techniques I really wanted to build a design around was layering. So layering is about stacking shapes and elements to add depth and complexity. One of the ways I used layering was to repeat simple shapes. And you can kind of see this in the vents in the front, on the top. You can kind of see it on the over the headlights on top, and then on the back, I have some more simple shapes just repeating. Okay, and let's see here. So the interior has a bit of layering on the dash. If I solo that, you kind of see layering over here. Also wanted to show overlapping panels throughout the car to give it more depth and visual interest. So if we go to the back, you kind of see some of this overlapping panels from the tail light to the bumper to the rear corner panel. I also incorporated it into the front corner panel and the front bumper. And so when we're talking about the interior here, I wanted to do something special to tie everything together. This is where I wanted to kind of translate it from the soft curve shapes you see on the exterior to the sharper angles of the exposed interior of the framework. And I wanted that transition to reflect how ZBrush has evolved over the years from a heavily focused on organics to kind of grown into something that's can handle more hard surface modeling extremely well. And that was a little bit of a challenge because you kind of had to keep the overall shape of a car. So I kind of wanted to translate that into the interior a little bit. So throughout the design process, I was kind of thinking about the end result not being a 3D model. Instead, I was imagining what would this car actually look like if it was manufactured? I started looking at what elements I could add or remove to reference different ZBrush features without making it too on the nose. One of those was kind of removing the doors. I started, let's see, the doors is kind of like, I wanted to make it feel like I was turning the visibility off in a subtool. Another element that I wanted to show, kind of like a subtle thing, is the roll cage. With the doors removed, it kind of felt like you're seeing the wireframe in ZBrush, showing the structure underneath the surface. The single seat ties into that concept too. It's meant to represent the solo nature of sculpting and modeling in ZBrush. Also, a couple other features I wanted to show was the arc over the roof line and the shape of the interior dash. I wanted that to resemble the motion that you see in the ZBrush logo. And really the overall goal of the design was to try to capture that same sense of movement you feel in the ZBrush logo, like it's in motion even when it's standing still. So those are some of the design elements I was kind of aiming for. That's kind of subtle, that you kind of feel but not really see. So the next thing, let's talk about the process. Do we have any questions so far, Paul?
Nope, you're good. Nothing yet coming in.
Okay, cool. So I started with the blockout, and kind of the role of a blockout is to establish the basic forms and proportions before diving into the structural definition and the details. I'm also keeping everything as low as possible. So you kind of see, I start with a cube, and I kind of move it out with the transpose and masking. I'm using dynamic and creases to kind of show the high poly version of the low poly. That way I can make easier adjustments when blocking out and trying to establish those overall proportions. Okay, the next thing here is, let's see here, turn on my Boolean. This is where, in this stage, I'm focused on defining major angle changes and start on the structural definition. This is kind of planar blocking. The major brushes used were the clip curve and the trim dynamic. I also went from high to Dynamesh here. Turn off black blue and you can see the poly count really high. And when I was using Dynamesh and the clip curves, some of the things I was using with Dynamesh is you would use polish. So every time you run a Dynamesh, it would automatically polish the sharp angles. And if I needed a little bit more control, we go to geometry and clay polish. You can kind of set up your sharps and your softness and how many times to run it to kind of get a more smooth effect on some of the angle changes that aren't so sharp.
Yeah, so two things before you move on, Henry.
Okay.
First question came through is, how long did the whole project, you say, took you doing the entire car, do you think?
Oh, man. So usually I don't really keep track of that. I would guess maybe from start all the way to finish rendering, 40 hours, okay. 30, 40, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. And then I wanted to touch base on what you just highlighted, the clay polish.
Yeah.
So if you want to show the Dynamesh so they can also have an interpretation and understanding that. So clay polish is being called by Dynamesh when you have polish turned on. So in the Dynamesh menu, if you want to show that one too, and then that way they can see that. It's right below the clay polish. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's a polish button that he has on, as you guys can see. That's what he's referring to. So you guys have an understanding. Yeah.
Right here.
Yep. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right, so after this stage, let's go back here. We have our secondary structural definition, right? So in this stage, I'm still working in Dynamesh. The basic structure is locked in, and I'm starting to refine individual areas. Even though the main mesh is still rough, this part of the process is all about nailing the design and finalizing the reads of the shapes. Then the next stage, let's go here, is this is our structural refinement. Now I'm in the structural refinement stage and I'm moving out of Dynamesh and into Retopology. So this phase is about cleaning up the mesh, looking at major forms with better edge flow, and separating out parts of the car into different subtools. So the topology isn't final topology. This is just a very low poly blockout. So we can start adding in more details based on the topology flow. Then finally, after that, this is kind of where we were looking at before. This is where all the detail comes in, right? So after everything is cleaned up and the major forms are locked in, I will start moving into the detail stage. This is where all the finer elements come in. This includes things like fasteners, welds, extra modeling for the surface breaks, and adding extra needed detail. It's also the point where I bring in nanomesh and micropoly to add a complexity without overloading the poly count. So and with this stage, I keep on refining the topology, making sure it stays clean.
So a question came through about the process you're showing for the stage, specifically, I think, in the beginning stages.
Mm-hmm.
How did you control the brushes to make a perfect smooth surface? I think it's regular to get some blobs that create minimal shades when moving the camera. So it's clear that there is some irregularity. So it's more, how did you control these brushes to get this smooth type surface?
So we're talking about this stage here, probably
I think the one before. I think the one you had before. I think the one, that stage. Like, how did you get this to actually create those clean lines with the brushes that you were referring to?
Okay. So let's take a look at that. Let's grab up the clip curve. Okay. So one of the ways we can do, we can use polygroup. So if I use the clip curve, press a space bar, I can automatically put polygroups in with the clip. So if I go ahead and slice it, let's turn on symmetry here so it's even. Slice it down. And now we can use this to clean it up. So if we do, let's see, if we mask it, blur, then I'll polish by features, kind of clean that up a little. And we can continue if you want to do that. Then we can run a Dynamesh. And that'll kind of like soften off that transition like the rest of these. That's one way if you wanted to manually do it. Let's say I do a clip here, just to, we do this, and let's say with the Dynamesh polish, you can kind of see the polish automatically cleans it up for you. And you don't even need polygroups when you use the polish. It'll automatically polish it based on the surface angle changes.
So on this stage, you're using mostly clip and knife. What are the brushes you're using mostly in this stage?
For this, it's clip, and then I'm using the trim dynamics.
The trim dynamics.
Yeah.
Okay, can you show a little bit maybe how you like to use the trim dynamic in this stage for them? I think that's also what he or she was looking for.
So the trim dynamic is like, that's kind of more for like if I want to smooth out transitions and come out and just really quickly smooth it out like that. And then if you run another Dynamesh, you can see like it'll smooth it out even more. So if I have a clip that has an angle change and I want to smooth that out, I can come through with the trim dynamic and kind of smooth out those two angle changes. So it's a softer transition between the two.
And then when you go to the next stage, what brushes are you switching to there?
Oh, that's a lot of brushes.
You're switching to a bunch of brushes.
Yeah, so this is more like I'm using Dam Standard to kind of hitting some angles, clay buildup to build up more of the form.
And then how are you polishing that? So when you're doing a clay buildup, what is your technique for you to start polishing that off so you get that nice
mostly H polish, and a lot of times I just did this for kind of demonstration.
Yeah,
it's a lot more rougher than this because topology will do a lot of the heavy lifting when it's smoothing. I just want to see the elements there. It doesn't have to be perfect lines or smooth surfaces. As long as you see the elements being shown, topology will take care of a lot of it when you're doing the retopology stages.
Right. So yeah, you're building up surface with clay buildup, and using H polish to kind of
smooth it out. If I
need
need some
bit of that, can you show a little bit of that so they can see that? Is that possible?
Yeah, we can.
It's just, it doesn't have to be perfect, just so that they can get the idea too what we're talking about.
Let's see if I wanted to kind of switch to.
By the way, what are you using here? So I'm sure the question is going to be asked to call up all the UI elements, because that little circular dial thing you're pulling up, what are you using there?
Yeah, so this is it's a plugin by ArtistNot, and here's a thing where you could put in brushes. We should go through. We could do alphas, we can do textures, and we could do materials. And a couple of things that I like about it is, first, you could use custom icons. Second is, every time a new version of ZBrush ships, you don't have to load it in. This is kind of like everything's inside a folder, and you store it into your oh man, I can't think. Wherever you store your other plugins, that's kind of where it stores.
Yeah, the Z Start right now, Z Startup. Yeah,
the Z Startup, and so you don't have to keep on loading it into the brush palette or the lightbox every time.
What's the plugin again? What is it called? And let me get a link so I can share it.
So it's by ArtistNot, and let me see, plugin here. It's called Personalizer.
Unless you got a link. Personalizer. Okay.
Personalizer, and what we're using is called the brush drawer.
Okay, let me see if I can Google real quick for you guys all, and I'll share that link. Here we go. Boom. Okay, here it is. All right, I'm going to share the link for you all, since I actually got asked to in here. So cool. There you guys go. All right. All right, back to the clay buildup, I guess, and H polish. We'll go back to that.
Okay, so roughly what we could do is just start building. Let me use the pen here. That's another thing. For like hard surface Z modeler, I'll just use the mouse, and for anything sculptural hard surface, I'll start using the pen. So if I wanted to maybe just add a panel here, I can use Shift, bring it in. Let's do another one here, right? Then I can switch to, let's see, something H polish. I can just go through and just smooth it down, H polish it down. Right. That's kind of where it is.
Yeah, you're trying to be a little bit free here, right? You're not really consumed with this. Has got to be a perfectly.
No, I just did this so everybody could see more of the surface changes on this stage, but this is kind of where you're taking it. It's lumpy. It's not for other people to see. It's more if you can see it and recognize it. It's more of a faster process. You don't have to clean up to perfection, because we are going to retopo, so it doesn't need to be decimated or anything. For the other workflows, this is more like topology. You'll be surprised how much topology will clean it up and will recognize different things, because we will be focusing on mask extraction to kind of get the surface and then extract with ZModeler later.
Yep. Okay. So we had two questions come in because of the stuff now you're showing. So let me give you the first one. Are these solid pieces in the blockout, or do you turn them into panels? Say, for example, create a sheet of metal, thin fender, or use solids to fill the mass and carve in the panel gaps?
So it's kind of like what I'm going to be showing with Retopo, but so if we're looking at, let's see here. So with the high poly, this is just, it's all one block. It's one solid block.
Those are all solid pieces of geometry. So like the car, with the wheels are each their own mesh.
Yeah, and then the rest of the car is one solid block.
Mesh, one block. Okay.
Yeah, and then we're going to start masking and extracting, and we're going to get different elements.
Oh, so you're doing a mask, and then you're extracting with extract, and then
with extracting, and then we're going to do, and we're going to show different ways, but retopology, manual retopo, and a lot of different other ways that we can kind of build clean topology from those extract mask pieces. Yep. And then sometimes we'll build topology straight on from the block, and I'll be showing that as well.
Yep. And then you do all this in ZBrush. You don't leave ZBrush.
Oh, no, I don't. So when ZBrush came with Edge Extrude, that's when I stopped leaving ZBrush for other softwares for retopology, because I wasn't the biggest fan of ZSphere retopology. But like there's so many different ways you could do it in there's so many different ways you could retopo in ZBrush now because of this, that it opens up a lot of doors. And also I'm going to be showing some ways where it's kind of like the more complex the hard surface model is, the easier it is to retopo. And it's kind of a weird statement, but when I show you it, it's going to make sense.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go through, because there's a question coming through about that, but I think you're going to answer it in the stream, what they're asking about topology, Z-remeasure, and all that. Yeah, I'll let you go from there now. Thanks for taking the questions.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, let me set up here. So let's see. So now we covered kind of like the basic process. Kind of want to bridge the gap between the organic sculpting and hard surface concepting. So the question is, does the workflow change when modeling, or let's see, hold on. Let's see here. One second. Okay, I got it. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah. Always having things that you have to adjust and change on the fly. That's the beauty of live streaming.
So I wanted to kind of bridge the gap between like the hard surface workflow in ZBrush and kind of like what ZBrush is mostly used for, which is organic process, which is like primary, tertiary, and secondary forms. So at the blockout stage here, both hard surface and organic models are kept low and simple. The goal is just to establish the basic form, proportions, and silhouette. And it's still all about big shapes and getting the overall structure right before moving on. Okay, so the second stage here is the secondary planar modeling. So at this stage, both workflows begin to focus on defining planes and major surface transitions. For hard surface, you're exploring how to angle change effects and how that affects the design, as well as how light reacts to it. For organics, it's about breaking the form into clear planes that help guide the anatomy. At this point, I will leave the low poly stage and jump into Dynamesh. Okay, so for the secondary structural definition, this stage is more about building structure. In both workflows, it's about defining core features more clearly. For hard surface, that means starting to define parts that suggest how the object is assembled or function. For organics, this is where underlining anatomy and key facial landmarks start to take place. Also prefer a little bit of surface breakup to help read the secondary forms. So we can kind of see that here. I find this helps a lot more, seeing some surface breakup, because when I used to do it was smooth, it was harder to see the direction of the anatomy, and this helps kind of see more of the muscle structure underneath. Let's see. Then we're on to the secondary refinement. With the structure in place, this stage is focusing on cleaning up and control. For hard surface, the model has now been retopoed and with clean geometry. which smooths out the rough Dynamesh forms and creates sharper transitions. For organics, this is also where I leave Dynamesh and retopple the model. The anatomy becomes more refined and major forms are preserved, but the attention turns to blending the fat pads and starting on the larger wrinkles. Plus more of the facial features from the photo reference is considered. See, for the tertiary details, this is where you start adding character to your piece. For hard surface, that means adding fastener, vents, welds, extra internal modeling components. All the same elements that give the design realism and visual effect. In organics, this is where you add smaller wrinkles, minor skin shifts, and light surface breakups. That captures more of the personality. So by this point, both models are structurally complete and the focus shifts fully to adding character and believability through detailing. Okay, so for the final, this is kind of where everything comes together. For hard surface, material and lighting are used to turn the model into a finished product. And for organics, skin shaders, grooming, and lighting helps bring the character to life. For skin pores, I like to blend the scan data and the displacement from ZBrush during the look dev process. One thing I like to do is add the scan displacement as a layer in ZBrush to use as a reference. And on a new layer, I will sculpt wrinkles and additional details to align with the scans to help blend the two displacements better during the look dev process. Both workflows do follow a similar path. It's kind of, you start simple, you build a structure, you refine it with a purpose, and you finish with the details. So
one quick question that came up during showing this down. Do you find you spend less time on modeling in ZBrush than in a regular modeling package?
I do, yeah. I know that's kind of like probably not the norm, but I've spent, let's say, I spent kind of 5 years in Maya before ZBrush came out in 4R7 with ZModeler. So I did build up a lot of like the core fundamentals. And there was a transition period where I was kind of learning, and also ZBrush was adding more features with every release, which kind of like bridged the gap even closer to what you would expect from a modeling package. So I think once 4R came out and it had the gizmo and some deformers, and then they had also a Boolean system with that, you kind of got a lot of what you needed to just fully do everything in ZBrush. And at this point, it's a lot faster for me to model, because I take a lot of the topology aspect out of it, where other programs are kind of restricted to the underlying topology. Whereas ZBrush, you can break out of that at any point, definitely when you're focused on proportions or the model gets complex, and you're not fighting the underlying topology anymore. You're just building the forms or proportions, and then at any point you can rebuild later, and you don't have to struggle with doing two things at once. I hope that makes sense.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. So we explored the workflows for both organics and hard surface concepting. But does the workflow change when modeling from a reference instead? So it kind of does a bit. When concepting, the focus is on exploring and designing. You're making creative decisions on the fly. When you're modeling from a reference, the process becomes more intentional. It's about accuracy, making proportions and form match what you're looking at. You still go through the same major changes. Those would be kind of like block out, structure, refinement, and detailing, but the mindset changes. So let's take a little example of that with a front bumper. So what we're going to be making here is a front bumper that looks like this, right? So we're still starting out with a block out. It's still about matching the overall proportions. We're staying low to get those big shapes quickly. See the topology of that. That's all I need for the proportion. You don't want to go too crazy. It's very simple. It's very fast. Next is the structural definition. So at this stage, it's about defining the major structural elements. And since I'm working from reference, the goal is to start locking in key shapes and angle changes. I'm using polygroups here to control the edge flow and get ready for further modeling. Then we come to the construction topology. So kind of the definition of a construction topology, because I'm sure it's not used that much. It's a modeling strategy using low poly topology with dynamic subdivisions and creasing to create a clean looking surface quickly without having to worry about good edge flow. So what I mean by that is you're going to see here where poles kind of hit the crease line, and it's going to cause a surface tension here. There's no supporting edge loops around creases, so you're going to see different fall offs of the crease. So things like that will affect, kind of more like production ready topology versus like a topology that's just built to get more of the shape together. So some examples that we can kind of break down is you kind of see when you don't have edges kind of like supporting the creases, you're going to get an inconsistent fall off of the crease. You can see from here, even on the side, you're going to see that crease is not what we want it to look like. You also see it from this side, running around the side. This is a lot tighter, and this edge is kind of farther away, and you're going to see a little bit of that coming off the sides. Also, this is an example of poles hitting creases, kind of what you want to steer away from. And for the last one here, this is kind of what you're looking for. Evenly distributed edge flows around creases, no poles hitting it. But there is kind of an issue where if you want nice clean edge flow around here, you kind of want to collapse these edges. Let's go over that real quick. So go to the Z modeler, and traditionally you would probably want to like target weld these two. Let's do, for this one, we'll do a collapse. You collapse this edge, this edge, this edge, this edge, and now you kind of see we're running a nice clean edge loop around here. But the issue still is the fall off isn't what we want. So now you're going to have to start inserting some edge loops. However, let's see here. ZBrush makes it a lot easier. To the point where all you have to do is ZBrush. Say polygroup, polyloop. Just get a separate polyloop running around it. The polyloop here, and then we could do inset, polygroup all, and I like to use standard. Now we can get that edge loop running clean around here, and we still keep the supporting edge loops. It's happening all around at the top and the bottom based on the polygroup. So if we go ahead and let's do here, uncrease all and crease. Kind of see now we have everything looking nice with just a couple operations and the polygroups driving the modeling operation. So let me show. Do uncrease all, then crease. And we'll tighten that back up here. Okay, so next one here is secondary refinement. This is where I want to switch to Dynamesh to sculpt more of the surface changes. The base shape is already there, so now it's about refining the form, right? So it's one of the powerful things about ZBrush is you can, at any point, go high, go low, Z-remesh, do mid-poly, and it only takes a couple seconds to do that. And that's one thing that ZBrush has over other software is the poly count flexibility. And you can handle high levels of polygons and the viewport runs smoothly. You can see an entire really complex model. And another benefit is you can see all the different angle changes and proportions without doing quick renders. because sometimes other viewports can't handle a large amount of objects, even in preview mode. So that's one of the benefits of ZBrush for hard surfaces. You can see all those changes happen in the viewport with no lag at all. And then finally, we have retopology. Since the proportions of form are already modeled, that's left. All we have to do left is retopo. And then the focus now becomes on clean, optimized edge flow. So you kind of see edges don't have any poles around it, supporting edge loops around all the creases. So we capture that form. So to sum it up, my workflow of concepting and modeling from reference are pretty similar, but the intent behind each stage is a little different. So when you're concepting, you're exploring. With reference, you're kind of more following. The tools are the same, but how you use them depends on whether you're creating something new or you're creating something real. So, okay.
So when you go from, obviously this is your final, the one before this you had dynameshing. How do you create the topology? Could you show a little bit how you create the topology now? From this dynamesh version to that final version?
Yeah, I mean, we do have so many different techniques for topology that it will be covered. So one of the things is, we'll probably just recap is, I will use, let's see here. I'll use something like a flat IMM. This is symmetrical, let's see. I'll just drag it on, right? And I'll start placing different ones like this to speed up the process, right? And I'll separate that to a new subtool, add some edge loops that needed, project it down onto the surface, and then start with ZBrusher. I'll start connecting the dots. And that's one way. For something like this, I probably wouldn't use ZBrushLIVE because ZBrushLIVE you can, but if you want the most optimized for a lot of surface changes and a lot of different holes, there is different ways we can go about doing it manually that will speed up the process. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to show a lot of cases when we get to the topology stages that kind of work with better examples.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah. So now I do want to clarify something, just so there's no confusion, because the concepting process I show is pretty different from your traditional 3D concepting workflow. For personal work, I do like to stay in the modeling mindset. That means I'm blending concepting techniques directly into my modeling process. I still care about exploring ideas and pushing forms, but I also am thinking ahead. I'm making sure the topology is clean and usable so I can take that into another software down the line. As where more traditional 3D concepting, it's more focused on speed and iteration. It's all about getting ideas out quickly, testing design fast, and making visual decisions on the fly. It's a process that leans heavily on design freedom and often pairs really well with more 2D tools. Okay, so now we're going to start getting onto some quick tips. Let's see here, quick tips. This one. Grab the move brush real quick. So it's this part of the presentations. It's going to be a lot of helpful tips for geared toward hard surface, but it can also help for organics too. And it's a wide range of some are going to be kind of simple, and some are going to be more advanced. So it's a little bit for everybody. And this is going to be kind of I'm going to show some simple, I think a lot of people are going to know it, but it kind of leads itself down the line of there's a reason why I'm showing this. So when we move on to the next stage, it's going to make a lot more sense. So with the move brush, we we have three different kind of modes with the move brush. We have screen space. And if you tap Alt, we can move by the surface normals. And if we hold Shift, we can slide across the surface. Okay, that's the three different modes we have within the move brush. So screen space moving is great for kind of shaping forms quickly. Moving along the normals gives you more control, lets you push and pull based on the surface direction. And sliding along the surface is useful for repositioning points and edges while still trying to preserve the underlying form and volume. So now with that, we're going to talk about three brushes and kind of how they differ from each other. So with the move brush, let me go ahead and mask the border, keep it consistent. And if we move these edges down, we're kind of see like the brush is based on the size of the brush and the focal shift, which is kind of determines the fall off of where those edges come out, right? So another brush we'll talk about is the Move Elastic brush. Hotkey's BME. And with this brush, what I like to do, I like to set it up a little different. So if we go to the brush palette and under elasticity, by default, the elastic strength is set at 80. I like to crank that all the way up to 100, right? So the strength setting is basically letting ZBrush know that how strong do you want this elastic effect to be in order to maintain the geo while it's being moved, right? And the elastic brush itself basically will dynamically update the topology you're trying to maintain the overall size of the polygons. And it's really good when you're using it with low poly counts. The auto adjust, we're going to come back later. And this elasticity on off is kind of like, it's basically an on off switch determined by the poly count in the thousands that you set here. So in this case, the elastic effect will turn off once you go beyond 25,000 polys in your mesh. So the effect here that differs is when you move the edges, it's going to kind of maintain the edge flow a little bit better, as opposed to come down here and we merge that down. You can kind of see the difference here, where it's maintaining the edge flow a little bit better with the elasticity versus the move brush. And if we want to see the effect of a brush that really kind of maintains the overall shape of the poly, we can kind of check out the cloth nudge brush. And this is really going to just kind of maintain the distance of points on your polys. And if kind of show that with more polys, we can kind of see, we can still break it up, but point to point distance is going to maintain. Right, so a perfect example of that is, let's see here. Let's go back to right here and turn on perspective. And what I use that for is the netting here. Little weight subdividing. So you can see I kind of moved it around. And once I got the basic shape of the base mesh, I can move it around with a nudge, and you can kind of see the effect of the netting will not distort it. Whereas, let's go ahead and use the move here. You can kind of see it will start to distort the micro mesh on this. So let's go back. So there is a reason kind of like why I'm showing the different brushes, because it's cool to show the features of what they do, but I do kind of want to show examples of why these brushes are useful in different scenarios, right? So let's go to white. Okay. So if we go back to the elastic brush, let's see here, elastic. The reason I use this is because if I want to kind of move a wire around, this is great for maintaining the overall volume of the mesh, and I can kind of move it around. Now, what I meant by the elastic auto adjust, when I move it and try to bring it back, you're going to try to see it's trying to maintain the volume, but we also kind of lose some of the volume when we move it back. So what I like to do is switch that all the way to 1 when I'm moving something like the wire. That way it's going to give me a really nice consistent volume change while I'm moving it, and there's not going to be that much distortion in the volume itself compared to other move brushes. But however, when you move it too much, there is kind of like a limit where you can do it, where it will kind of distort, right? So in that case, ideally what you want is kind of like what it originally was it having a curve in it, right? So we can kind of like put a curve back into it. It can be done, right? So let's go ahead. First thing I want to do is say uncrease all. Let's see here. Uncrease all. So it's all uncreased. Then I want to go to the Z modeler. Let's say I'll do a mask, edge loop complete. I want to mask one of the edge loops, right? Invert it. Then I want to bring the gizmo, kind of move it right in the middle. Something like that. And the idea is to move the edge inwards, right? So if we just normally just use a scale, it's going to try to scale all the edges and points to the gizmo. Instead, what I'm going to do is hold Control and do an inflate. And I kind of want to look at this point here and move it so it's almost in the center, right? Clear the mask. And then I want to switch to crease, edge loop complete. Just hit a crease right in there. Let's see if I hit a crease. Should do it. And then what we could do is we can go click on frame mesh, turn off border poly loops. And frame mesh is in the stroke palette and under curve function. And we can click frame mesh, and that'll give us a curve back in the middle. Another thing we want to do is make sure beforehand is we want to set the size of the brush to the size of the wire. Then we can bring up the curved toothbrush, click in the middle, and now we can use the curved toothbrush to kind of reposition. Let's go ahead, stroke. Let's see what we do. Modifiers. Let's see, curve. Okay, so bend start, bend in, lock start, locked in. And we can start manipulating this around and recontrolling it. We can also use different, we could do elastic we want or liquid to kind of like, move it out and keep these kind of where they were. If we move it out, we can hold shift to kind of smooth it back if we want. We can start moving this out further than we could with the elastic brush. And all you need to do when you're done is, let's say, just delete the mask points, because that was kind of like our reference point. Then we have the curve, we have the hose back, But the problem here is we're still getting that topology back from the curved tubes. So we can fix that easily. Just, let's see here. Go back to our select rec. And delete the ends. This will help ZRemesher. And let's see. We do have keep adaptive size at 25. Let me show you why. We run ZRemesher, right? And we go to 0. It's going to kind of break down kind of what, till we get probably like a 4 or something like this, which we don't want it that low. Adaptive size is going to kind of keep some of those polys while we're doing half. So it's not going to break down too far. Right, so we got a better clean topology here, but we're still, where are we at? 1,500 polys, which is way too high for a hose. So we could do is, let's say, we use delete loops to kind of remove some of them. Now we're down at 650. We want more, can increase that angle. And now we're at, let's see, 330. And it's still kind of keeping the shape. All right, so that's the first quick tip.
Okay. Couple quick questions.
Okay.
Have you ever shared your UI at all anywhere for people to access it if they want to use it to learn from?
Mm-hmm. The UI, I mean, my UI changes basically every time there's a new ZBrush update. But I mean, if you go to my YouTube, in any description, I have a link there that you can kind of follow for one of my UIs that I kind of adapted for that specific course that I showcase. One of the problems is for sharing my UIs, I have a lot of custom macros, a lot of paid plugins that I use. A lot of custom hotkeys too, and it's very tailored to how I work. You can definitely use it as maybe like a blueprint to make your own, but I would definitely kind of more suggest build something around your own workflow.
Yep.
For UIs.
So another question here, just how do you handle something, say like a bike chain with curves?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the curve is just distorting the mesh and allowing you to place the curve where you might want it to go. Okay. Do you have something that you prefer to use or do when you're trying to do something like that instead of like a hose?
Yeah, for like bike chains or treads or anything, I don't use curves. There's two things I like to use. One is array mesh, or two is nano mesh. Those are kind of like the things I like to use. I get more accuracy, I get more control.
Array mesh, array mesh and what? Nano mesh. Oh, okay.
Those are the two things I like to use for like repeating more complex elements.
Sure. Okay.
For array mesh, you can kind of build up a chain, and so you can kind of build it around a chain. And for nano mesh, all you have to do is kind of like set up the topology beforehand, make sure it's kind of more equally spaced, and then you have more control based on the polygons when you nano mesh your chain piece in. I think for the summit, I used a tank tread. If you want to check out that, kind of like my process of making a repeating item.
When you did the presentation for the ZBrush Summit,
yeah.
Okay, I'll find that link and share it in the chat. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So next up is, let's see here. Let's get this set up here. Okay. Next up we have is snapping subtools with contacts. Right, so what I want to do is I want to put this point here, right? And I want to snap it to, let's say, that point. Now, The problem is when we draw out a point to a point, it's kind of hard to get it precise. Let's say I want to do it from here to here. I'm not really sure kind of where I'm hitting because it's two different subtools, and that's a problem. Also, if we have the same subtool, and we'll turn off the visibility here, we can snap point to point. However, when we go down to contacts here, it's all grayed out because you do need two subtools for this to work. Now, to help troubleshoot this feature, it's kind of useful to understand a bit of the history of originally where contact points were designed to act kind of like a virtual markers set with the transpose line. You know, they were used to define and maintain the spatial relationship between one subtool and another when one gets moved, right? A great example of that is if you hold control. They give you an example in here in the help section using the demo soldier. So let's use that as an example to break it down. Let's say you want to move or rotate your arm up, and the demo soldier has a glove, and it's a separate subtool. So here's kind of how the workflow would go. First, you would select the glove, draw the transpose line from the glove to the wrist, then you would press C1 on the contacts palette. Next, you would draw out a second line from the glove to a different spot on the wrist, and then press C2. Then you would do the same thing for the third point and then press C3. Now you would switch to the demo soldier body, mask the arm, and then rotate it upward using the transpose line. Then finally, you would switch back to the glove and then press apply under the contacts, and then the glove would snap into the correct position based on a new placement for the wrist. Now that we know kind of like the origin of like how contacts were originally used, it kind of helps you troubleshoot different scenarios. So the three different types of guidelines are kind of like things that contacts need. First, you have to use the transpose line. The gizmo won't work for contacts. Second, you have to use multiple subtools. They won't work in the same subtool. And then the third is kind of like you got to reset for a new placement. Anytime you do a contact, you got to reset. So those are the three kind of like the guidelines. So knowing that two subtools won't get you exact pinpoint position, what you can do is come in here, draw out the transpose line to one point to another, and then under the split, we can say group split. You say okay. And now the transpose line will stay in that exact position. And if we go down to contact points, we can say C1 and then apply. And now we can get exact point-to-point position with the contacts. That's kind of like the workaround I kind of use. So for IMMs, it's sort of the same situation. So let's bring up IMM here. IMM here. So if I want to like draw it out, let's see here. It's kind of hard if you don't want to, kind of hard to snap it out. But if we use the gizmo, control click mask, we can just click and it will get to an exact point. So that's two different types of way where we can snap one mesh to another mesh using point-to-point precision. Okay. Let's see here. So let's talk about the extrude for a minute, right? There's a cool feature. This is a simple, easy one. So if we use Retopo and we do extrude, and we want to extrude an edge, right? We could tap, and the different tapping is cause, if we look here, it's set to edge and then edge loop, and that's the two different settings we're getting when we extrude and tap, right? Now, if we want to go all the way around, right? Let's see, that's going to be poly loop. So when you do that, we can hold Alt, and that's what gives us a poly loop all the way around. However, if we want to switch the functionality, if we want to do edge and poly loop, we can do this. Now we can do an edge, and we're tapping, we can switch that. And then holding will give us this effect here. So we could switch between edge and edge loop and edge and poly loop. Now, if we want to say I don't want to extrude, let's see, get back to the first one here. I don't want to extrude an edge loop like this. I want to do, let's say, if you want to extrude this edge, and this one down here, you can hold Alt, tap it, and now we can move those out by holding down Alt. So we can do more localized edge extrusions by tapping on the poly face or tagging the poly face white, and then you can get more control over your edge extrusions. Right, so the next one, let's see here, is next one is kind of using polygroup flat island, but we're kind of using a hidden feature in it that's pretty useful. So if we go ahead and we hover over, say we want polygroup and flat island, and let's say I want to polygroup this, and we kind of continue to click to get it. Instead, what you can do, you can click and hold, and it's going to continue to find the polygroup until a sharp edge happens, right? So clicking will get you a couple missing, click and hold, it'll get you everything to a sharp transition. Kind of the same thing here, click and hold. And we can quickly go and get polygroups based on the surface change. Let's see, now, a couple of other hidden features. So if we look at this, solo this, and we have edge. We have edge loop here, and we know that edge loop, if you hold Alt, will also delete an edge loop. And if we showcase this, see, edge loop partial, we'll do this. And if we do edge loop complete, it's going to not collapse this, but run it all the way through. So those are the two different functionalities between edge loop partial and edge loop complete. Now, insert has the same built-in algorithm based on whether you choose single edge loop or multiple edge loops. So single edge loop, if you hold Alt, acts like delete edge loop partial. Whereas insert multiple edge loops will act more like delete edge loop complete. Now, another cool thing is, let's say I want to delete, say, edge loop partial or edge loop complete. And zoom in so you can kind of see here, depending on which side of the edge I click on, depends on which side the edge will collapse. So you can kind of control which side you want it to collapse to. So if I make sure the cursor is past the edge on this side and I click, it's going to collapse this way. If I hover over and make sure it's on the other side, it's going to collapse on the other side. So you can kind of control edge flow when you're deleting or collapsing based on which side of the edge you're hovering over.
Could you repeat the, someone's asked if you could repeat the polygroup flat island one again so they can catch that?
Okay. So undo here. So if we're looking for, we select polygroup flat island, right? Regularly we want to, for click, it's just going to select the flat island based on the surface changes, right? Then we would have to go click again, and continue to click till we want all the surfaces to kind of be the same polygroup. Instead, if we have defined surface changes, we can click, continue to click, hold, and then drag, and it's going to continue to find different elevations that's not sharp and continue to add the same polygroup until there's a harsh surface change. Another example is here. Let's click, continue to move out. We can see it'll stop at a harsh transition. Back here, see? If we continue, it will eventually find an angle. But you can kind of gauge where it's at, you know? So back here is another one, click. You see there's missing polygroups because of the surface changes. Continue to hold down and drag, and it's going to find them. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Yep. All right, so let's see where we're at. Let's go. All right, this is a cool one. Let's go here. This is something that I remember Joseph Drush showing, and I always kind of wondered to myself, why is he doing it this way? And it took me a while to figure out why he does it this way, because there is more steps to do this type of bevel than another bevel. So let's use an example of like what I mean by. So if we go here, right, let's say I want to do inset, polygroup all, standard, right? And you kind of like, oh, I want to do QMesh, and we'll do polygroup island for this, right? If you hold shift, you get a bevel, right? It's quick. And if you're doing a lot of different things, it's super fast to do. But here's the issue. Let's do polygroup all, hold shift, right? Bring it out. We're going to try to get, with sharp angles and corners, we're going to get inflation. And this is what kind of like Drush was showing. He didn't show it with this, but it was like, this is why it kind of makes sense for me, is where you extrude out without holding shift for the move operation. And now if we hold insert and delete those edges, we're going to get a nice even spacing between that bevel. And that's kind of like the differences of like when you should use shift and move to move into a bevel versus like collapsing or deleting an edge to get a cleaner bevel along surface angle changes. Let's see, next we have, use it on this piece. Next, I'm going to kind of show, and I know we all know right-click navigation, but there's a reason why I want to showcase this, and it kind of ties into the next thing I'm going to be showcasing, which is one of the things is not only can you right-click over the model, right? You can also set your pivot point based on where you click on the model. That's an important thing that right-click navigation has. And kind of what the right click is like if you hold Alt and right click, you can, or you hold right click, you can rotate around. Right click and hold Alt, you can pan, and if you let go of Alt, you can zoom. Another way you can do it, because there's different ways you can do right click navigation, is regular right click, rotate, hold Control, and you can zoom. And then if you hold control, right click, control, zoom, and you let go of control, and you can pan it. So it's like the opposite of alt. So if you don't like that zooming in with alt and letting go, you can right click with control and then right click with alt. So there's 3 different type of ways you could do right click. Now with right click, what I want to show is if we want to set the pivot here, this is important because this ties over to screen space rotation, which all I'm doing for screen space rotation is I hold down shift, right click, and then release shift. So that's kind of the order of operation you have to do it in. And if I want to like rotate from here, let's see here, you can set the pivot there. So you're not rotating the model, what you're doing is rotating the canvas. And this is useful, let's say if I want to maybe like select something that's kind of like not really in the right angle, I can quickly come here, move it over, and kind of get that. Another way you could do screen space rotation is with the transpose line. So if we drag out, if you hold control in the white, let's see here, drag out here, right? So I've got to hold control first. And then you can do screen space rotation. And the difference between this and holding shift is this one allows you to snap to different angles by holding the shift key. Okay, let's see here. Let's see. This tip's pretty cool. First, let's set up our brush. Our brush, I want to use the mask lasso brush. So let's do mask lasso. And by default, for me, it's kind of, I like Masso's kind of more smooth. So the first thing you can do, and this is not the way I do it, but you could do lazy mouse. Hold control first, click on lazy mouse, click it up a little bit, and you can drag out your lasso using lazy mouse. However, instead, what I like to do is if you hold control, click over the stroke, you can increase the mouse averages and the smoothness. And those are both set here too, so hold control. I like to set the mouse averages to 10 and the smoothest all the way up. And now the lasso is just a little bit more smooth for me. Now, another cool feature about the mask lasso brush is how much it blurs depends on how far the model is away from the camera. So if I get close here, do a mask lasso, you can kind of see there's a little bit of blur. And if you zoom out, do an extreme here, and you can kind of see it gives you a nice gradient. This is really helpful for high poly meshes where you don't want to continue to click and blur. This will give you you zoom out, you can use the mask lasso brush, and it'll give you a nice even transition with the blur. Also, let's say you can kind of see here, split the difference, you can kind of see. So you can use that kind of to your advantage. And let's see here. So with the Z model brush, there is a thing here called sphere eyes. And I do see a lot of people kind of using it and not really understanding how to kind of use this feature. So let's kind of go through and kind of show you how I use it so you can get like good effects from this feature here. So with this, let's say I want to do all polygons, right? So what happens is you shrink it down, you get a sphere, but now what happens is all the points are merged in, and this is kind of probably not the effect you're looking for, right? So if you want the border, you can do all polygons, you can do flat island, and you can do polygroup all. You're going to kind of get that same effect. So what you want to do, you want to go mask the border, and then you can run a polish by features to kind of even out the polys inside. So you get the border as a circle, and then the polys redistributed. All right, so, and mask by features. It's in the tool palette down under the masking palette down here. So another thing we can do here is, let's go spherize, let's do flat border, right? And now what's happening is you're kind of getting less of that effect that you get from all polys at flat island. But what you have to do is, since it's a less of effect, you have to run it twice. Let's see here. Right, once, not sure why that. Let's do polygroup border instead. And now we can get, between here, this is more like not the same angle. So we run it twice, we can get that. And then we can still run through mask by features for the border and a polish by features to get that nice even spacing of the polygroups. Okay, so for a polygroup, let's say we want to do the interior of this. Let's do polygroup. How do I want to do this? Let's do inset polygroup island. Set. Okay. Spherize polygroup border. Let's use it as this example. So let's do this. Run a polish to get this back. Let's see. Then we can do inset. Let's see. Polygroup island. Just to get an inset here. Then we could do polygroup. Do poly flat inner. So one of the things we have to worry about when we're getting perfect circles is the space between the circle has to be even and it has to kind of be the same angle, right? So what we could do is we can do mask by features. Let's invert it and then polish by features. Let's go ahead and just polish by features a couple times. And now you can see these points are equally spaced and we get our circle. And this will just react better when you're modeling. So if you kind of see it's QMesh, polygroup island, kind of see, you'll get better results once the points are kind of like evenly spaced apart. Show an example here. So now, let's do flat spherize, flat inner. Let's say I want to do a circle, keep the border the same, but I want to do a circle on the inside. So we could do polygroup and polygroup inner, just to keep this. Mask by features and to run polish by features. Now we can start getting our circle back from Spherize. Now there are going to be certain circumstances where Spherize will come in handy, but typically what I like to do is if I need the border polished, all I have to do is run a polish by features, repeat it a couple times, I got it. And if I polygroup enter, and if I need the interior, I'll do the same thing, polish by features, repeat that a couple times, right? So let's talk a little bit about polish by features so everybody's kind of on the same page. In ZBrush, a feature refers to things like open borders, polygroups, or creased edges. Other places you'll see features like this is mask by features and frame mesh. You kind of see they kind of expose those features for you. So when using polish by features, you'll notice there's an open circle and then there's a closed circle, right? So you zoom in, you can see there's two different options you have. And these kind of represents two different algorithms. The closed circle tries to preserve the overall shape and volume of your mesh, which works really good for low poly models. The open circle, on the other hand, applies more aggressive polish to it. It tells ZBrush, don't worry so much about maintaining the volume and put more focus on this and strength on polishing the features, which works really good for higher poly meshes. Let's see here. All right. So let's say I want to take this polygroup that we assigned here and I want to make it, I want to make that turn into a circle. So what we have to do is first store a morph target. And we can unmask that polygroup. All right. You can run a polish by features. Start getting a circle. We can also use the gizmo. And what I like to do is, let's see here. I like to use the white circle. It's kind of like it's like a guide to kind of like create the rest of it. And then we can clear the mask here. What happens is you kind of see there's going to be kind of a small fall off here. This is where we can use the project morph to get our overall shape back. And you'll see that a lot of times where you're creating circles on curved edges, when you polish it, it's going to create a flatter surface. You store a morph target will kind of, when you use project morph, will project what you changed back into the volume of the mesh. And the difference between a morph and a morph target, if I undo, is if I morph it back, it's remembering the location of the point and restoring the point location. Whereas project morph is projecting not the vertexes back to the volume of the mesh. Okay, so let's say we have more of an extreme example of this. So we'll go ahead, select these two, unmask it, run a polish by features. All right, we got our circles. Let's see here, bring up the gizmo, Control click, reshape it. Right now, and of course we can go ahead and project morph, but there's going to be cases where there is a limit to project morph. Once you start altering the topology, that's when project morph breaks down, and we're going to show kind of a workflow around that. So before we did our project morph, let's go ahead And I want to, I want to retopple this with better topology before I morph it down, right? So we can do the top. Let's fix this real quick. I want to say, use the IMM here. And for the brush settings, I want to make sure in modifiers, I set the projection strength to 100. Moved out, control drag, redoes the topology for me. For the back, I want to do 32. Project it out, control drag. Now I have retoppled those polygroups to have better topology. And I kind of broke the morph target. So instead, what we could do is scroll back till the point where we did anything. I could control click here to store a history point in our timeline, come back, and then from the project, we can say project history. And that'll get our volume back after we kind of destroy the topology, retoppling it with Mesh Fusion. So that's kind of that process for that. And then finishing up kind of on our tips section. Let's go to our gizmo here. So with the gizmo, the cool thing about the gizmo is when you control click, it unmasks a polygroup and then masks everything else. So that's one of the features of like gizmos. You can unmask a certain polygroup just by control clicking it, and it'll mask everything else, right? So we kind of have to take that same logic as when we're doing a deformer, right? Any type like these deformers, you could kind of do the same thing because we're built into the gizmo. So what you could do is you can say, let's say I want to use, say scale. Say I want to scale. And since we're in Gizmo, all you have to do is control click and it'll unmask that polygroup, right? So now we can kind of scale in based on the polygroup here, right? Go ahead up to the gear, press accept. And we could say, I also want to do, say, a twist, right? Control click on the outer part, polygroup you want to twist it at. And we can do, say we want to twist it here, something like, say, 25 here, 25 here. Now we can start getting interesting shape just based on masking of different polygroups, right? Now there is a couple that won't work with masking, and one of them is deformers. That's because you're using masking with it. But the trick about that is, let's say I want to still use masking. You can control click before you go into the deformers, and then say, let's say deformer soft. And now what you could do is we could still use masking. Just we have to use it before we go into the deformers, right? So something like that. Then press accept. Now there is some that won't work either way, and the deformers that kind of won't work is the ones that kind of change the topology. So masking won't work with decrease, extender, multi-slice, project primitive, and any of kind of the remesh options. But all the others will work with masking. And that's one of the like cool features you can do with the deformers is mask, and then you can manipulate based on the polygroups. Also, another cool thing is if you mask out different models within the same subtool, you can deposit the masking will still work. So if we use bend curve, it's just going to know that we want this one, and we can still go in, control click, and kind of do what we need to do. So that's one of the cool features too. You can mask, and then when you're inside the modifiers, you can continue to mask the polygroups inside that. Okay. So a very cool feature I don't think many people know about is a thing called group change points. This is located in your polygroups down at the bottom, group change points. And group change points looks at any changes made to the mesh that has been sculpted or poly painted, and then assigns a new polygroup to those areas. It checks for different points and positions and color, and then if they have been altered, then they will get a new polygroup. So if we kind of show an example of that real quick, say I want to just use the move brush and just move it out, right? I can go down and say group change, and any point that's been moved will give you a new polygroup. That's one of the cool things about it. Paint brushes work the same. If you use the paint, you put some paint on there, it will polygroup based off the paint strokes you do on the mesh. So group change points also has two modes. Go ahead. Let's see here. Polygroup so we can see. Anytime you see that circle, there's two different algorithms associated with that, right? So the closed circle assigns a unique polygroup to each changed area. So if we have closed polygroup, if I run it, right, I go ahead, run the group change points, do it again. We're getting different polygroups every time we run that. However, when you do an open circle or hold shift, it assigns the same polygroup to all the changed areas. So do a couple, let's say, open it up, change it, do it again. It's going to give you the same polygroup. And that could be useful. So a cool thing we can do here is, let's say I want to, let's use this. This is one of Shane Alsa's brushes. If we come through here, let's say we do a mark like that. You can say group change points. And we'll do another one. Right, group change points, same polygroup. Now we could do select them, convert the mask, and then run a polish by features. Let's open circle for more aggressive polish, and then we can go ahead, control click, and now we can start getting some interesting shapes here. Let's control click it to sharpen it, and then we can start extruding it in. And based off the brush strokes we made, we can polygroup, do some extrusions, and get a little bit cleaner design. Here. Also, we can also use alphas, which are pretty cool. So we could do is just drag out an alpha and group change points. We can go ahead, control click, the polish, right? You start moving it in and stuff. However, let's say the thought process is, why do I want to just use an alpha, right? Just draw it out, and there you have it. The difference is, if we run a group change points, Let's do a different, so I can showcase this here. Let's do something interesting like this. Drag it out, group change points, polish my features, right? Now, the difference is we can move it in. We can also like rotate it out if we want, kind of give more depth, scale it. We could do a lot after the fact. And that, you know, a little bit more control when you assign polygroups to something than just dragging out an alpha. So we can also do that as we're clipping, right? So let's do clip curve, and you can turn off polygroup. So as we're clipping, you can always go ahead, polish the clip afterwards. And let me first go ahead and turn off the line for this so we can see this better. Clip. Right, so with the clip, by default, what's happening is if we just do a normal clip with polygroups, let's see here, polygroups on. You get your polygroup here, you get a polygroup there, and you get a polygroup here. Now, by default, you can't change. I don't think you can change every time you clip. You can get the same polygroup, and that's where group by change points is good, is where you can do a clip, assign it to the same polygroup. So as you're clipping, if you want to kind of like blend these together with a polish, you can kind of do that through like selecting all the polygroups and running a polish to isolate this by itself.
You could use your undo history as well.
To do.
So if you store an undo history point now at the top, like
Okay.
right now at this point, do at the very top, hold control and click on it. No, before you do
Oh,
that.
before. Okay.
Before you do that.
Okay.
And then now do your three clips. And then now the change point will look at the undo history and make all of those the same polygroup.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Then you can go ahead.
Yeah, and then do your polish that you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Control blur. And then you can just run a polish and kind of smooth those transitions out. Cool. Let's see here.
Don't forget you got to undo stored history right now. So you might want to clear it.
Let's see. So since we're on clip brushes, let's show some cool stuff we can do with clip brushes. Let's see here. So let's go back. We could do a clip curve. Take this out. So clip curve. We could do a B radius, and this is based on kind of your brush size. You can go here, clip it down. We can also kind of combo that with adjust last. We can kind of push it out, give it a bevel if you want. Another cool thing is, let's go ahead. We'll do B radius with polygrouping. And let's say we do clip curve here. Let's do smaller brush size. Do clip curve, right? And I want to do clip curve here. I'll give you another clip curve on top of the clip curve, but let's say let's say I want to, let's turn off symmetry. Let's say I do want to like put an alpha here, right? You're going to see that because of the curve, it's not really forming to, it's just going to reach a plane and just kill it, right? So what you could do is with clip curve, clip it down. Let's increase the brush size here. Clip it down. You could run your alpha like you want. And then what you could do is unclip And now you can have that that alpha wrap to the surface of that angle. And also, since we have, let's go ahead and turn this back on. We have polygroups when we're clipping. We can take it, unmask, and if I want to soften that transition, you can do a polish by features and kind of blur that. And kind of get some kind of cool effects with the clip curve. And another one that this is my favorite one. It's called the let's see here, knife curve. And if you pair that, split by parts, this is very powerful in the sense that you can just go ahead. This actually sliced it in half and gave you a mask. So now you separate that off, slices it clean, gives you new poly groups underneath. What you can do is you can really just start the design and do interesting shapes with that. It's really cool.
So we got a question about your rulers. So you want to
yeah.
hear a little bit what you're doing there with your rulers and how you're doing that?
Well, my rulers are, I mean, it's not like an actual ruler. I have ticks here, major and minor ticks up to 10, kind of more for like proportional stuff, and like kind of seeing the different sizes of different parts. I think if you want an actual ruler that actually works, you'd probably go look at Shane Olson's ruler. He has a whole, I think, ZBrush setup that's in line with actual measurements. And then with this little projector here.
Yeah, so but how are you? They want to know how you're doing that.
I mean, it's just eyeballing. Like if I have a part here that's like maybe.
They're asking how did you get the ruler?
Oh, how did I get it? So I just had a plane. I got like an image, and I just projected it with a spotlight onto an image, and then I kind of did a material shift with the color to kind of blend it, because this isn't an alpha, this is just blended in. So if you kind of, let's go depth here, kind of see there's a shadow in a different part, you can kind of see an overlap. So this is just an image baked down onto my my canvas. I saved it out as a document from, saved as I saved it as a document, and then let's see, save as startup doc. Mm-hmm. And then when you do that, you go to Lightbox, and your documents will come up here. You know, it'll open up every time you start up as ZBrush.
Yes, and since he's doing this and making it an actual document, and then he's made it so his ZBrush will default to this document, to that specific size with the ruler there.
Yeah. Also, the protractor here, I did a. So if you use clip, let's see here, clip curve. If you draw out, you can kind of see there's an angle here, right? But if you continue to draw, it's still an angle. But if I want to match an angle, let's say I did a clip here, I did a 40-degree clip. I know from here, 40 degrees, what I need to hit is 140 on the other side to match that same angle. That's why I kind of have this as reference to match different angles. Let's see here. So last thing before we get to topology, what are we doing on time? Ooh. Are we going to have time after this to?
Yeah, you can get your topology. Yeah, you can get your topology.
How much time do we have after?
Whatever you want. That's whatever you're good with. This is my thing for today, for me too as well. Besides the normal emails and everything else, so you're good to go.
All right. I didn't want to.
Nope, you're good as long as you want to keep going. I don't think they're going to say no.
Oh, okay, cool. So next thing, this is the last thing I'm going to talk about before we get into topology. And what I want to touch on is macros. So hotkeys and user interface, they're all kind of like cool things and like very useful things to optimize and kind of like speed up your workflow. But as much as they're useful to speed it up, macros will 10 times speed up your workflow. when you're pairing it with different actions in ZBrush. So a macro in ZBrush lets you record a series of actions and save them as a button. So instead of repeating the same steps every time, you just click the macro and ZBrush does it for you. It's a great way for speeding up your workflow and keeping it really, really efficient. So let's just demo real quick, kind of like some macros that I have. So let's go ahead. We have clip curve. I want to make sure polygroup is on. So we just do a real quick clip here, just so we can get a different polygroup, right? And then what we can do, control, click it. Now I just want to make sure this is clean, right? So let's mask it, right? And then let me make sure I have symmetry on. So if I have this polygroup mask, what I can do, and I can go ahead and use one of the macros, that's extract hard. Now what this is doing is extracting the masked area into a new subtool, and it's also running a Z-remesher multiple times with symmetry on to get to the polygroup. So that's just one click of a button to do that. Then if I don't like, if I want to remesh it even more, what I can do, so I can go Z-remesh hard. That's going to Z-remesh by half 3 times. So I just did this 3 times in a row with one click. Then what I can do is I can press extrude morph. That extruded the plane, gave me some thickness, and it also gave me a morph target. So I can go ahead and extrude it based on the morph target here. Right, so if I bring back our original, I can do here is now go ahead, flip it. Let's do Q mesh, polygroup island, move it out so we can see. And then all I can do is, what I want to do is just press subtract. What that did is made this subtool subtractive and automatically turned on Booleans for me. So I can go ahead, extrude it in. And now what I can do is press this, which that did is it turned on, it creased it at an angle of 50, turned on dynamic, turned the subdivision level up to 4, and set my crease level to 3, all in one button click. So that's kind of like how you can speed up the workflow by doing multiple things in succession. And you could kind of see, like, if you weren't explaining it, it just really kind of like, just, I don't know how to explain it. It just, the difference is night and day as far as like getting things out faster in ZBrush. So, and also those, it's kind of, do a quick polish, you kind of see those artifacts go away. So kind of some of my go-to. I'll start with the one that kind of like I use the absolute most, and it's kind of like a little bit of an extension of what the Drush tools did. So I'll show you here.
So the option menu you're pulling up, they're asking about what are you using to make that happen? Or is that
this one?
Yeah.
This is I think it's called Auto Hotkeys, and it's a plugin it's not specific to ZBrush. It works in almost every program as long as you can assign a hotkey to it. And it's I like to put all my operations like welding, merging down, auto groups, group by normals, and I have another one that's turn on solo, double, flip, orthographics, floor wireframe. Then I have all my masking and selection. Then I have my clip, slice, and knife brushes. and then my macros on this one and some macros on this one. Just really quickly doing different hotkeys with right click, and it pops it up.
And it's called auto hotkey. Is that
Auto hotkeys? Yeah.
so? Autohotkey.com. I'm assuming is the one you went and got. It's for
Pretty
Windows
sure.
only. It's for Windows only.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that the one I found?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can use it for file manager. You can use it for even Google. You can use it for anything that assigns hotkeys and
I don't know if it's the one he's got, but I put it in there for you guys. It's called autohotkey.com. Is what I put in there. That's an open source custom scripting language for Microsoft Windows. Keyboard shortcuts, and there you go. Okay, that's probably it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yep. So with Drush Tools, he made a plugin here called QC 20, 30, 40, and 50. QC stands for Quick Crease. And what he did is when you go to geometry, you went ahead, you could set the crease tolerance, and you press crease, first thing he did. Then he went ahead and went to dynamic subdivision, turn on dynamic. He set the smooth subdivision to 4, and that's kind of what his system was. What I did is I made another one that did the same exact process, and what I did is I went back to crease and set the crease level to 3. So now I can use mine in conjunction with his. So if I do mine first, and let's see here, if I just do this real quick. If I set crease to 50, it's going to go through, do that macro, set everything up in the crease angle at the 50. And now I can use his and say, let's say I just want a 40-degree crease. And it'll do that, and it'll still maintain the crease level because that came after his macro. So I can go and do different crease levels with his and always apply mine first to keep that crease level going. See, and if you're looking for some really cool ones, Ryan's Tools is something I always recommend people, because for 2 reasons. One, there's a little bit for everybody. And 2, he's very consistent with his updates, and that's something that I always like and appreciate. And if you do that, I always are more willing to recommend plugins. For his, he's got a couple that are crazy. I think the extrude morph is his. I also use his smart split and delete functions. I kind of go over that in a pretty good detail on my intro video on my YouTube. But yeah, those are kind of like the things I kind of use for his. Let's see, other macros that I kind of use. Some that I've created are Dynamesh, where I apply I have 2 here for Dynamesh. That what happens is I apply the Dynamesh, delete the lower subdivisions. Let's see here, geometry. I go delete lower. Then I'll run a Dynamesh based on what I set there, which is either 1000 or 512. And then I have one after the fact where I run a Dynamesh, and it'll apply polish right after the Dynamesh. So those are kind of my macros and some of the stuff that I kind of use to speed up the process. See here, and I think that's it for quick tips. So now we can kind of go to topology. Let's see here. So the first one, is there any questions before we start in topology?
I think you got most of the last one was what button do you have set up? I'm assuming they're asking what shortcut are you using to call up that menu.
Oh, that's, I mean, Control Shift right click, Control Shift Alt right click, Control Window. I mean, all the little things in right click will call up. That's not like predetermined. That's anything you want to create. We'll call it up.
All right.
Okay, so this is a really interesting. I kind of find it by accident. This tip is there's ways where if you want to isolate subdivisions, you can either mask or hide, and it'll subdivide the unmasked parts. But by doing this, I accidentally found something that's interesting, and that is I can kind of like convert tries to quads. And there will be times where you need to convert tries back into quads. You know, maybe you accidentally saved over a version where the mesh is already converted for a game engine, or you know, you're working with outsourced assets that came in fully tries. That's where this can come in handy. And it's a real simple process. All you have to do, Control click to mask everything, and then Control D to subdivide. And it's going to remove all the quads and give you all the tries and give you quads. Another example of this is like we have different densities here of the triangles. So Control click to mask, Control D subdivide, and now converts all to triangles, right? Now there is a catch, right? This method only works best when the underlying topology has good edge flow. If you're working with something like Decimation Master, it will convert the tries to quad, but the topology will still be messy and really not usable. In those cases, it's better to use ZRemesher or go with manual topology. Here's an example of that. So the edge flow underneath is kind of like messy. So if we mask it all, Control D, it will convert, but it's kind of crazy. Okay, so that's kind of like first tip for topology. And so next one is going to be tackling this. All right, so this is going to be a little bit of a weird statement, but from my experience, the more complex the model, the more powerful ZBrush becomes for hard surface. And we're going to use this cylinder head as an example of that, right? So what we're doing here is, this is basically, if I turn off my Boolean, we're using Booleans to kind of create this mesh. And this is kind of what it's all coming down to, is these two Dynamesh parts. And these Dynamesh parts were used using groups. So that way I can always recall the entire piece I did. Right? And if I turn that off, you kind of see all the Boolean parts that were made. So what's great about the Boolean workflow is if you put it into a folder, go to the gear, and let's say you want to Boolean the folder, or you could do Boolean if you're using subdivisions. And what will happen is it'll create a Boolean here. And this is what it'll give you, right? Give you a nice Boolean mesh. It's all watertight. It's going to try to connect the points between the different, the Boolean topology and your blockout topology. But the important thing is it retains all the information you have here. And what's useful about that is, we take a look, this is the Boolean mesh. And it has topology already predetermined for it. So I already have a lot of the retopo already done for me, and in the places that are kind of hard to do. And that's what's great about this workflow, is you're building your base topology as you go right through your Booleans. And in this example, not only is half the model already done, it's in spots that would be a real pain to do by hand in a lot of time. And also, I don't want to really box model this. I kind of want to do the Boolean workflow where I have more visual control of what I see. And even box modeling this would be kind of a challenge. Not saying that I couldn't do it. It's just, it's going to take a lot more restrictions with the underlying topology in this workflow. And also your mesh topology is really what determines the total topology of your retopo. So if you need to go lighter or heavier, you can tweak that any time during the Boolean stage. All right, so, and when you're all done, all you have to do is connect the dots, and you're kind of looking at something like this, right? So that's kind of one of the powerful things, and one of the interesting things about this workflow is you can get more complicated with your meshes, and then speed up during the retopo stages later on.
So just to clarify, right, you're doing your Boolean process, you get your result. Obviously, Boolean is going to keep any existing topology. What for you is all your subtracts. And then you are then cleaning up the topology with ZModeler to bridging. Okay. So you're deleting the one main polygon and leaving that. Is that what you're doing? You're leaving what's left, and then now you're bridging between everything?
Yeah, so all these here is just the Booleans I did, except for the main block out here. Yep. And so with this, I have the Boolean base as like what we're referencing for the retopology. And then we have all our Booleans that I'm taking out the folder, combining into one. Okay. And then I am using ZModeler. Say I have some presets. So for the edge action, we have extrude, and we have snap to surface. Yeah. And then point action, quick set it. We have by brush radius and snap to surface. And then I'm just, connecting the dots here. Yeah, and then you're just extruding, bridging across. And then just wanted to make sure everyone was understanding what he was saying here, so you guys got a clear picture, right? So he's using and they're in places that are like super hard to retopo. Yeah. And I'm getting all the threading too. That's kind of would be hard to do. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why we decided to make Booleans do this process, not to triangulate the entire thing. The only triangulation you're getting on the Boolean is when there's intersections. Yeah. There's no triangulation. Yeah, there's no triangulation. It's really, it's crazy how fast the retopo process speeds up with this. And if this was symmetrical, which kind of you see there is a little less symmetry, you can just delete half and do half and then mirror it over. Yeah. So to the question that's coming through, can you reference the mesh topology to apply to another? I mean, with ZRemesher, technically, yes, he could do that as well. ZRemesher does remesh locally, so by visibility. So what I mean by that major block that Henry has, he could only show that and then just tell ZRemesher to remesh that, and it'll figure all the topology out. But you're not going to get crazy clean topology like his final result is. ZRemesher is not going to do a good enough job for that. Yeah, there is a limit. But I mean, you could, you could use ZRemesher if you wanted big, large sections kind of exposed, and then fill in the gaps for the smaller holes and surface changes. There might be models that would be best beneficial for that, but this isn't one of them. Yeah, this is very complex, actually. There's quite a bit going on here for them. Great tip. Another great tip. Thanks. Killing it with the tips tonight. Yeah. Wanted to get deep in the bag today. Yeah, you're in there all right for sure. He's been sharing a ton of stuff, guys. Just a boatload of stuff. Great stuff. All right. So now we're going to get into kind of more of like car examples and kind of what you guys are kind of asking for during the process stuff. So for retopo in the car, I'm going to start with the secondary structural definition stage. We're still using Dynamesh, right? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to mask off like a certain section like the hood. So if you have enough angle change here, which you could do with the masking, let's go ahead and bring up the brush palette here. Going to the depth, you hold control, you can do depth mask. You can squeeze these outer and inner depths, and you can kind of like if I use, let's see, the right mask pen, do it for this one too. You don't want to go to 0, a little bit above 0. You make a mask up to a corner, right? It'll kind of help you out if you've gone to the stage where you kind of polish it up. But if you didn't, you could just mask it off. It could be dirty because this will be kind of like cleaned up during the retopo. And all you have to do now is say, take it, Control W. We got it. We want to make sure we duplicated this. Got our topology here, our polygroup from the mask. Let's say we want to select it, and then we can delete the hidden. Now we have one part of the car that we can retopple from. So, kind of like break down the process, or kind of like a checklist for preparing a model before running ZBrushLIVE. I kind of have 4 things that give me the best shot at a clean result. So the 4 things I'm looking at, what I need to kind of tackle before I run ZBrushLIVE is I'm looking at borders, I'm looking at polygroups, I'm looking at symmetry, and I'm looking at sharp corners. So for the borders, I always want to check to see if the open borders and polygroup borders are clean. If they're not, I need to clean them up first. And to do that, I'll kind of unmask the borders and run a polish by features. So the second thing is polygroups. That's what I look at right after the borders. Depending on what the model needs, I'll decide whether to assign the polygroups before or after ZBrushLIVE. So if it needs more control over the angles or edge flow, I set up polygroups beforehand. If I'm still in the middle or refining or adding detail, I'll wait and assign them after ZBrushLIVE. Next thing is symmetry. If the model is symmetrical on one axis or more, I make sure symmetry is turned on before I run ZBrushLIVE. And the last thing I'm looking at is sharp corners. I found that sharp corners are usually the first thing to break down during ZBrushLIVE, especially when running half multiple times. So I'll kind of slice them off to avoid the breakdown and help with edge flow. I can always add them back in with ZModeler. So let's go through kind of the process here. So what we have is just the polygroup mesh. We didn't do anything to it. This is the result we get from ZBrushLIVE, right? Next up is I clean with the border. And this second, the second hood here is ZBrushLIVE with just a clean border. And this one is with symmetry on. Then let's go ahead. If you run it a couple times, the corners, this corner will start breaking down. So what you do, you slice it off, run ZBrushLIVE, run it half a couple times, and you get something like this. Now, a thing you need to remember is when you run ZBrushLIVE and you say, I want to run it with 1K with no symmetry, it's going to look at it and say, I'm going to try to get you at 1K. But if you turn on symmetry, it kind of like splits the model in half, runs it at 1K, and then kind of mirrors it over. So if you're thinking you're going to get symmetry on and you're going to get 1K, it's going to double it. So it's going to give you 2K. So if you're running symmetry and you still want to keep 1K, just knock it down half by run it at 500 polys. Okay, so next is, so now that we have at this stage, what I want to do is I want to kind of add in polygroups because I want to build up structure and more form through the polygrouping. So I'll just slice it in with a slice curve brush. Maybe use the move brush to kind of angle this into the right shape. Then what I'll do right after that is I'll run a ZBrushLIVE with keep groups on and smooth groups down to 0. And then after that, I'll start extruding, adding more edge flow around the edges to kind of help with the creasing and kind of this shape here. I want more edges running around here. So I'll do that with the ZBrush brush until we run like the final topology of this. So that's kind of the workflow, like extracting a mask, using ZModeler to get to a certain stage, using polygroup to define different mechanical parts and elements, and then ZModeler to build that in and adjusting topology on the fly when you're at that stage.
I got a question actually for you coming in.
Okay.
All right, just by curiosity, when you build something so detailed, is it for printing or VFX? Because it's still not going to be manufactured product, right? Tolerances and so on are not taken into account.
So, yeah, I mean, this is morely for if you're looking for more like a film pipeline. Evenly spaced quads, creasing, and then creasing can even be converted to bevels if you need it to be. So it's more in line with the film production. It's definitely not for games or print, but at a certain stage, it's not ZBrush not being able to, it's the user. So you can easily at a certain stage increase the topology if you need to, or decrease the topology to make it game ready. At any point, you can ZBrush has the tools to do it. It's not a ZBrush issue; it's a user issue. So it's kind of like that's kind of like what you're seeing more of, is more of like a film pipeline when I do my stuff. Anything else?
Nope, you answered it for him. Thank you.
Okay. So next. Next one could be an interesting one, right? So we can grab a polyplane from the gizmo, the gizmo. And then what we can do is we can use, say, something like Deformer Soft. And we start kind of getting the edge flow kind of where we need it to be, getting the borders right to line up. So all we're looking for is the outer borders for this. And let's see, delete this for now. So we got one set up already. Now what I want to use is, I want to use ET and then the cloth transpose brush. And I want to look at the dynamics tabs. So the collision value, I kind of want to set it to low, so 0.001. Right? So, and I kind of want to increase this simulation iterations to 500. Now what we could do, just move it down and project it right onto the surface. Okay. This is kind of like a starting point for topology. Now what we can do is we can grab the slice curve. And with the slice curve, I want to kind of match the spacing here. And let's see. What I want to do is use B radius. Go ahead and slice in. Make sure it's in the middle. Slice in that edge. Now I use B radius because I wanted the edges to be consistent. And if you use two slices, there's greater chance for errors. Now what I can do is I can weld it across, right? And I can do here, project all. And ZBrush, I could do half. depth of size is 0, keep groups on, and smooth groups, and a ZRemesher. Give you something like that. You can also turn on symmetry. Do another, let's see here. Do project all. And we got a starting base for our topology using the cloth transpose, where we can now use the ZRemesher or the Z-modeler brush to kind of extrude out the edges here. Then add in edge loops and continue to project down and build our topology that way. So you're building kind of like, you're starting out with like a base, projecting it down with the cloth brush, setting in some angles to further refine the different angle changes, and then continue on with the Z-modeler brush to continue on the edge flow. Also, a lot of these things that I've done is kind of like experimentation and doing a lot of weird things with combos. So if you wanted to like just be weird and experiment, you can kind of take maybe the Move Infinite Depth brush. You can probably throw on, I don't know, let's see, do a curve as line, do some weird stuff like this, right? And then with the the Move brush here, kind of alter the kind of the slope of it based on the curve. So there's a lot of like just weird things you can combo to kind of get really cool results. So let's see.
To answer the question, the extrusion process snapping the new vertices to the underlying surface. Yeah, he's using dynamics dynamics will collide with the underlying surface.
Okay. It's when I set the inflate value here, collision volume already activated, and it's using the plane and it's colliding with, it's using this as the collision volume, and it's snapping to the verts to that surface.
Your in-place slider, guys, is just controlling how far off the surface is it going to sit when it collides. So you can make it collide and it actually never touches the surface. He wants to do the opposite. He wants to get as close to the surface as possible. So that's why he's turning it way down instead of having it at 1.
Yeah.
Great trick. Yep, another good one. Throw it. You guys are going to need to rewatch this probably 18 times.
I hope not.
No, it's good. We should, because they got to get it all in, right?
Yeah.
You're sharing a lot.
Let's see. So side door. So let's tackle the side door next. This is where I'll just use this IMM. This is kind of my IMM Mesh Fusion. I have a bunch of different preset planes that are all quadded and specifically used for either Retopo or Mesh Fusion. It is free on my ArtStation, so you just grab that if you want to use this. And speaking of that, since I also got another free one. My primitives, they're all quadded too. Just planes, cylinders, half spheres, rivets, weird stuff like that. So what you could do is grab a plane, right? Just drag it on the surface. We could do, let's say, turn off solo for this so we can see, right? We can go ahead, we can split that off. Now I can use Z-modeler, can move the points over. Get the largest surface first. Insert multiple edge loops, grab a couple, move it up, kind of snap it to the surface here. We can also do a quick project all. And now we can let's do Retopo. We can kind of start continuing this edge flow up, all while I'm kind of moving points as we go. And we're working like large surfaces first and continue to move this down and over. And occasionally projecting down. And then we can continue just adding in edges, quad it up, then project down, you know, something quick. Build your quick retopo really fast by, you know, adding different things like that. Also, if you want to even hit up stuff like this where you can do multiple stages to speed it up, you know, and then come through, bridge these together with the edge extrude, add in some edge loops, move the points around, and you can kind of get some topology really quick, base topology to kind of build from. Okay, so now let's do another one. And this is the rear quarter panel. That's looking at this piece here. And we're going to use ZBrush approach to it. And we're going to use grouping from the slice brush to help control the edge flow. So let's say we masked the part out and we separate it out as a new piece. So this is our polygroup mask from our main body of the car. And this is ZBrush with nothing done to it, right? So this is, we clean up the border. And since we don't have symmetry, we can't use symmetry. And this is ZBrush with nothing but the border cleaned up. The edge flow is going different ways because there is a surface change. Now, if we go ahead, from the base, we slice in with the slice curve brush, kind of where the edge flow you want it to go in. ZBrush it. You're going to see with keep groups, smooth groups to 0. I do want to keep adaptive size a little bit higher because I do want it to kind of help with the edge flow around surfaces that are changing. And so you can kind of see the edge flow is already better along here. And then if we run half and keep the polygroups like this, it's going to go lower and maintain the edge flow we kind of initially did with our high poly here. And then what you can do, clean it up, run a mask the border, clean the borders up, run a polish by features, and give it some thickness. And that's kind of how we create the corner panel of the car. Okay. Next one. So this one is a little bit more manual retopo. And what we're creating is, let's see if I have it here. This is on the side of the dash in the interior. So we're going to kind of go through how I created this part. So we started with an initial low poly blockout with a little bit of the movement down here to capture that angle change. Then I did a slice rectangle, and that's kind of like helping me gauge for this extrusion down. You can see that there. Then I'm doing a ZBrush, same, with keep groups on, smooth groups to 0. And this is going to look at this and build this up. And then with this polygroup, all I did was I did a inset, polygroup island standard, and then kind of deleted the ends that gave us. That'll come around here. Then I just Q-meshed the polygroup island with shift holding to give it to that little bit of extrusion down. Then I gave it some thickness and with high poly. That way what I can do, So I could start sculpting in different changes of the model. Gave it some thickness because I didn't want it to come through any of the thin parts, just to create more of the shape of what I'm going after. And I'm still high poly, but I wanted it to be more of a thin plane for the Z remesher. Also, when I'm doing IMMs, I kind of want to build from here. So what I did is I took the same IMM I was using, and I started with like a 16, dragged it out. You can kind of see the topology here, placed them around here, deleted the middle loop here, and then started extruding it out to create kind of like the starting point for my retopo. And when I do have kind of like circles, I always like to start with circles because I want the beginning topology to have that evenly spaced points around the circle, and then I can kind of like fill in the rest. And it just helps the process down the line doing that sometimes. And it is part dependent too. Sometimes I'll create it different ways, but if it's a small object that I can get done pretty quick, I'll start with the holes first. And other holes, like stuff that doesn't require multiple edges to create it, I will do a split. So split point, triangle center, and you can kind of see I could create that way if it's a small piece. Okay, so it's kind of the process for the side of the dashboard. Now let's talk about disc brakes. So with this process is, I started with just a simple cylinder, and then I created some cylinders using a symmetry with the radial count to 20. Right, these are live Boolean, and with this I can just mask it, control move, and that's how I kind of duplicated this around. And similar to the process what we did with the cylinder head from the Gizmo's gear, Boolean with dynamic subdivision. That way it gives us this Boolean mesh. And then I can take from the folder our original cylinders that we use for the Boolean. And I just move them down a little bit so they're the same height. I extruded it out using the ZBrush brush. And then what I did is I retoppled this piece, giving us the topology you see here. And it's kind of like the cool thing is, like, when you're retoppling this piece, you're still using radial count. You're not doing individual. So each extrusion you do, showcase this here, is off. See, projection, retopo, still extrude in radial, using the radial count, and it just really speeds up the process. So all you have to do is really consider how these connect, extrude them out, give yourself a little bit of edge room going on the borders, just connect them up.
So it's safe to say this person's looking at what you're doing. You start with some good topology, then you kind of dynamesh it, or even in this case, you Booleaned it, then you add some details, and then you retopo again over the details.
Mm-hmm.
Safe to say that's kind of a little bit of your workflow.
That's a little bit of the workflow for, like, more when you get to the more complex shapes and objects.
Yeah.
Obviously, simple or intermediate kind of like shapes, Z modeler perfect for that. And you'll notice even when you're doing big projects, like even something that looks complex, like a helicopter or tank, 70% of that is very simple box modeling stuff. It's just, there's certain things that do get complex, and that's where the poly count flexibility comes in handy, where you don't have to stay, restricted to the underlying topology. You go up and down real fast, get the forms you need for that complexity, and come back down in topology for your lower topology models. It's just a faster approach, definitely when you get to more complex parts.
Yeah, I would say I'm with Henry on this. This is like he started this stream with this. Topology doesn't really matter. You're not restrained by the topology. If you guys notice this whole time, he's like, I'll do this topology, then I'll change it again, then I'll change it again. This is the power of ZBrush. You're not stuck with, hey, this is topology. Now you're stuck with this topology. Now you got to figure everything out, right? If you guys notice, a lot of stuff, he's like, okay, it was better for me to do step with simple topology and then do a couple slicing, retopologize. Now I want to, and then he goes, okay, now I'll ruin the topology with dynameshing it or Boolean it. It doesn't matter, and I'll just reuse. This is kind of the one thing I would say I also am a big fan of for hard surfacing as well, is let go of this limitation of topology in essence. Because there's freedom here for you guys to go back and forth. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's probably one of the things if you are coming from a box modeling background or like having a mindset of like, I just need to stay in ZModeler the entire time, you will be running into a plateau. Because the power of ZBrush is the freedom to go up and down in polygon resolution very, very fast.
Yep. Good stuff.
So one last thing we can talk about. Let's see. If you do, let's say I want to do a poly group right here. Poly group, let's say flat island, right? But I don't want to do these edge loops. I want to just stay within this section. A really cool way to get poly groups based on the decreasing is polygroup fill. Now what I could do, polygroup that real quick, and it's only looking at the border of where the creases are. And now what you could do is QMesh polygroup island. You can kind of add more details without really setting up a different polygroup here. It's just a quicker way of like, if your creases are set up and you don't have enough surface change for a flat island or anything else, fill, I think is a new one relatively, that you can do polygrouping based on the crease edges.
Yeah, it's relatively new. It'll appreciate creasing borders and polygroup borders as well.
Okay.
It'll look up both. Yeah, cool. I want to say it was in the last 4 years. Could be wrong.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's up to you. I think I have a tire in the rim to show. That's the last part. If you want to continue, if not, that's cool.
Yeah, you want to take another 10, 15 minutes, or do you have more than that you want to do?
I could probably get maybe one of them done in 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. Sure.
All right, we'll do the tire.
Okay.
Tire here. Let's see. Okay, we'll do here. So starting with the tire, with our blockout, we started with this kind of just roughly proportional shaped tire. So what I want to do, first thing I want to do is kind of delete the middle poly group, and I want to add a couple edges down the middle here to kind of start what would be the groove of the tire. So if you want a little bit of taper, really cool thing you can do is let's do scale, do polygroup all, and the important thing here is to choose polygon center. So now to adjust the bevel, we can do all of them at once. Next, what I want to do is, because it's a blockout base, the topology is a little bit too low to add in all the tire treads. So what I want to do is subdivide it a little bit, right? Now, it's a little bit too much on the vertical edges, so I have to get the right density, so I have to delete those. And that's what I did on the next one. Delete the verticals run and keep the horizontal. And I also polygrouped would be one tread that I need to run across the entire circumference of the wheel. So next thing I did is I duplicated the tire, and then I deleted the rest. So I still have that block out here for it. Because all I want is the one part of the tread, and it's only half the tire. Next is I want to model in that tread detail. So a lot of it I used was slice mesh, and from the point and from the edge action I used also slice mesh, and then I used from the polygon action do nothing. That's kind of how I sliced in this design here. And then you see it before with the construction topology. To get this edge loop here, I created polygroups, and I used insets, polygroup island, and standard, and then deleted the extras that came through this way. That way I got a nice edge loop running across the border. And then what I want to do is what I want to do now, because I want to use array mesh. I have to move the tread to the center of the world. You don't have to, but it makes it easier for me to use array mesh. Now, what you could do is you could use Unify. So what Unify does is it resizes the subtool to its largest dimensions and fits roughly within a 2 by 2 by 2 unit cubed. The second thing it does, it relocates the subtool to the center world axis of 0, 0, 0. But what I want is I want it to relocate to the center of the world, but I don't want it to scale up. So another way we can do it, if I go ahead and show, let's see, the floor grid here. There is a macro that comes with ZBrush. Let's see here. And you can zero out the position without affecting the scale. And what I want to do is I want to zero out the Z-axis and Y-axis. So let's do that. Zero this out, zero the Z. Now we're in the center of the world, but we're at the same height. And before I do that, right, I also want to do is set a home stage and a target stage. So the home stage would be here. I would zero the location out, and that would be my target stage. Now, after I do the array, I can switch back and forth to the original location, because this is the original location of where the tire sits for the car. Okay, so now we're here. Frame it. You can also get rid of the floor grid. And now we can go down and use array mesh. So turning on array mesh, the first thing I like to do just as habit is press reset. I will set the repeats to 68. I will set the rotation in the x-axis to 360. And then I will look at the pivot, and I will bring up the transpose. You can activate it by hitting the transpose button up here. And then we can start bringing down this little yellow circle here. We can bring it down. If you hold shift, it'll lock it in. Just don't snap it here. Let's go ahead, bring it down a little bit more here. Something like this. And if you want, let's go back to the pivot here. Let's see, we can zero this out. For the Y amount, we can click on it and we double click, we can have this little tiny, this little blue button here. This is the second slider that just really fine tunes the slide movement. We can click that and just really dial it in. Here. Slide it up until it hits the edge. Like that. And then when you're ready, all you have to do is click Make Mesh. It should be watertight because it welded it, because it's really close. And now what we can do is we can say Switch Stage. Go back to our subtool. Bring up our reference here. I can bring up the gizmo. And this is something you could actually create a second stage in Array Mesh and mirror it over, or you could use the gizmo here. So I can alt click to set the pivot here. I do want local symmetry on with dynamic, because with dynamic it's looking at the gizmo's orientation for the mirror and weld. So I'm going to turn that on. And let's move it in a little so it's not directly off. And then if I do hit a weld, you'll see that it's in the wrong direction. Now, really cool thing you can do without flipping flipping or mirroring it. What you can do instead is hold Alt, hold Shift, and you can snap the X to the other side, right? And now when you do a weld, it's looking at where the arrow is pointing, and then it's going to weld based on the gizmo. So, and then let's turn on dynamic, and then there you have it. There's the tread.
Excellent. Nice.
Cool.
Well, you might as well finish it off with the rim, since you got tired. Might as well get that rim in there.
Cool. Last one. Last one. Here we go. So for the rim, I did a little bit of a cheat, right? So we could go to Lightbox, and we're looking at Spotlight. What I did is I loaded up the Spotlight primitives. And if we turn on Z, bring up the radial dial here, we can click here. If we click inside this little light blue circle, we can snap it and we can move it over. And turn off Z. Let's make this mesh a little bit bigger here. Z turns on the dial on and off, and you want to turn everything off, it's Shift Z. So let's click inside the box, inside the blue, snap it, outside of the blue, move it, we can snap it into the middle. And you can see there's orange dots right here, or yellow, looks like green, snap it. Then we can, up here, this is our scale it up. And then whenever you're ready, click this little camera icon, and you got your mesh. Real quick, real easy. And it will also, depending on the thickness of the tool that you're using, it will it'll give you the thickness of kind of that tool. Get everything else out of here. So it's the same thickness. So if we thicken this up, the thickness, the Z depth that it projects back to will be determined on the subtool that you're on. So from there, all I want to do, grab the subtool, delete the ends, And I just want this plane of the ZBrush logo. Right. So, let's see here. So what I did real quick is from here, like I showed you, I deleted it. I still have the plane. And I did a quick ZRemesher adaptive size to 50. Nothing really changed, and I just used saved. And that's kind of what we got here. And to prep for the angle changes of where I want to cut and kind of move this off, I used the Z-modeler slice points and just sliced in a couple edges for the creasing to help with the edge flow that I get. So if we kind of let's run it real quick, do a ZRemesher. So you kind of see ZRemesher half, adaptive size of 50, smooth groups a little bit high, detect edges and keep groups. We're running the edge flow along with the creases here. And that's important because I want to kind of delete these creases, bridge them underneath. And that's kind of what we did here to kind of like give it some depth and make it continuously flow around. Next thing I did is I kind of like masked the border, did a very, very light polish by features. And if you, instead of like going to, if you're sliding up and you're trying to get one, all you have to do is click on it, and clicking on it is the same thing as going to one. So you don't have to like try to fiddle with going to its lowest possible setting. So we got to clean up the edges. And ran another ZRemesher with save. And then all I did was give it some thickness. And what I'm looking for with the rim here is when I gave it thickness, I wanted to bevel this the same size as the bevel running across the rim. And I'm also kind of making sure when I Q-mesh these together to weld, that the space of the polys match the space of the rim. And it would be kind of like the Q-mesh will give you some harsh angles, and that's where I just did a manual mask. Let's see, I did a mask on the poly, masked it out, unmasked it, and then ran a polish by features to kind of smooth it out into the rim like this. And an interesting thing that kind of happened with this is I had trouble kind of, it didn't have this part initially. It was just this with an open. And I was looking at kind of rims that had solutions like motorcycles where it was running based on wheels moving the interior. And then the ZBrush kind of didn't have a center axis to kind of to rotate from. So I just reused an old rim, made that the center point where the axis runs into, and then have made it look like more like the ZBrush logo is floating inside the rim. That's kind of it for the.
Well, that's a lot, right? And you're going on almost 3 hours here.
I know.
You've been doing a lot. Like again, everyone, this is going to be recorded, so we'll remove this and this. This is being recorded, of course, and it'll be on our YouTube channels forever, right? So you guys can go back and watch this as much as you want. And then, again, I will share Henry's ArtStation again in the chat real quick, so you guys, again, have that. I'm sure you guys seen throughout the stream, I was pulling up that we also have the ZBrush Summit was announced. So stuff like this, what we're doing with Henry, that's kind of what our ZBrush Summit's also all about. So it will be virtual only, except for a little kickoff party we're going to have here at the new office here in Hollywood in person. But the rest of it will all be online. So there'll be more news coming for that. And then, of course, this got brought up a little bit throughout the stream. iPad, all the stuff that Henry was showing is also available in iPad, right? All these features and stuff that he was doing.
Yeah, a lot of the features was done in like the beginning parts of the car was done in the iPad. It just when the subtool list got a little bit crazy, that's when I switched over to the desktop version.
Yeah. So, and then just keep that in mind. And of course, for subscription ZBrush, you get both desktop, iPad, and Redshift as a subscription for ZBrush. There's also a subscription just for iPad. And then iPad does have a free version that you can get going for free. And that's something we're also looking at getting going on the desktop side. So something the team is working on. So Henry, I just want to thank you, man, for that was a lot. That was great.
Yeah.
You really killed it, showing a lot of stuff. People
I had a good time. I hope people liked it.
Yeah. This was fantastic. Everybody was really enjoying it.
Cool.
So, and appreciate your time and all the nice little tricks that you showed. Is fantastic.
Yeah, no, I had fun. For sure.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna let Henry get back to his day. Going back into things.
Yeah.
Really, again, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Everything you've done, everything you do for the community, sharing your work, sharing your tips. It's amazing. Taking the time to do this pro project. Again, everyone, that vehicle ships with ZBrush, right? So you guys can go see and now literally now go rewatch this and you can start seeing how he was making that car. And you guys could also now remake that car too, right? So I can't thank Henry enough for willing to take his time out of his day to do this stream and then also make the car for us that we could ship with inside of ZBrush iPad and ZBrush desktop. It's a beautiful piece.
Yeah, I mean that's a bucket list thing though. Like to have your model ship with ZBrush, that's not, you don't have to thank me for that. That's not everybody gets to have an opportunity to do that. So I'm very, very grateful for that.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it, man. It's really fantastic what you were doing. So
Thanks.
Really appreciate it. Okay, so we're gonna call this stream done. Okay, and again, please feel free to rewatch. Again, I'm Paul Gabriel with the ZBrush team. We have Henry Chervenka as our special guest. Thank you again so much for everything you've done. Really appreciate it. Everyone else have a fantastic day, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world.